From going back to the drawing board on the leading duo to making a big change in Ariel's motivations, here's how The Little Mermaid changed from its original concept. With the release of the live-action remake on the horizon, there's been a lot of chatter on the internet about all the things that they're changing from the animated version. I'm sure Disney wasn't surprised about this at all, because the older movie is a GOAT-tier film, one that stands out even in Disney's animated catalog as a stone-cold classic. But as I'm sure you've heard, this new movie is doing things a lot differently from the original, and it's featuring a bold new take on Ariel and Eric's stories. Some people, you may have noticed, have strong feelings about those changes, and while a lot of the backlash has been against some dumb things, I do think that the newer movie is very different at heart from the older one. So, let's compare the two movies today. First up, The Animated Legend. Released in 1989, The Little Mermaid was the story of Ariel the Mermaid, one of a race of creatures that live underwater, with top halves that look human and a fish's tail. Ariel is super fascinated by the surface world of the humans, and she even collects all the knickknacks she can find that were either thrown in the ocean or were found in shipwrecks. Her dream is to go up there and hang out with humans and marry her crush, Prince Eric, but her tail won't get her too far on the surface. She makes a Faustian bargain with Ursula the Witch, trading away her voice for the chance to be a human for 3 days, and the only way she's gonna get her voice back is if she can receive a true love's kiss, which makes Eric a lot more important to Ariel's adventure. Those 3 days are packed with action and a heaping helping of romance and drama, and those are just a few of the things that make this such a beloved movie. The 80s were a time when movies could get away with being flights of fancy, and that's exactly what The Little Mermaid was. There's a lot of dramatic tension from whether Ariel can manage to get that kiss, and her romance with Prince Eric isn't smooth sailing, but the characters are all lovable, which makes you want to see them succeed. Well, I guess no one wanted Ursula to succeed, but honestly, she's a total icon. The characters and acting were just part of the package, of course, and the movie also boasts a unique visual style that makes you fall in love with Atlantica and the surface world, but the real standout aspect of the movie was the music, which was said to have brought Broadway to cartoons back in the day. From Part of Your World, to Under the Sea, to Poor Unfortunate Souls, this movie's collection of timeless bangers was complete. The Little Mermaid didn't have to wait to be recognized as a classic because it was showered with box office returns, rave reviews, and awards at the time. All that success even led to the movie getting a direct-to-DVD sequel, which some of you might be hearing about for the first time. The sequel was called The Little Mermaid 2: Return to the Sea. It catches up with Ariel and Eric, who got married at the end of the first movie and have since had a 12-year-old daughter named Melody. Playing an Uno reverse card on her mom, the human Melody wants to leave the surface world and live in the ocean, and she seeks out the help of Ursula's sister Morgana. Most of the original voice cast returned for the sequel, which was pretty cool, but it still lacked a lot of the things that made the first one so great. In other words, it was your average direct-to-DVD sequel from Disney. Melody's character, voiced by the legendary Tara Strong, received a lot of praise, but that wasn't enough to elevate the movie past a 17% freshness rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The Mouse didn't let that stop them, as they followed the sequel up with a prequel called The Little Mermaid: Ariel's Beginning, but that movie was also given a cold shoulder by basically everyone. Disney eventually stopped beating this dead horse, until 2023, that is. Now that we've gone over the original, here's how the 2023 version will be different. Some of the changes are obvious. The movie isn't animated this time, and Ariel looks pretty different. Those changes aren't worth thinking too much about though, and I'm more interested in how the spirit of the movie is gonna differ from the 1989 version. Director Rob Marshall told Entertainment Weekly about one massive change in his version of The Little Mermaid, and that has to do with Prince Eric. In the original movie, Eric didn't have much of a personality, so he was pretty much just the guy that Ariel was going after. This time around though, he has an entire storyline of his own, and it's gonna involve his mom, who is, naturally, the Queen. The introduction of this storyline is gonna put Eric on a similar journey to Ariel, so let's take a look at how Ariel's story has changed. According to leading lady Halle Bailey, The key change from the original to the new is in Ariel's perspective. As much as people loved the animated version back in the day, it's been criticized for some things lately, with the biggest sticking point being that a 16-year-old giving up her voice to run away to a strange guy isn't something to be romanticized. This, according to Bailey, is where the new movie is going to take a different direction, as her goal isn't just getting Prince Eric anymore, but she'll also be motivated by a desire for freedom and purpose in her life. Ariel's trip to the surface will be a journey of self-discovery, and it'll reflect the fact that women are independent and modern. Though Bailey has a soft spot for the original movie, she was honest about how Ariel's thought process didn't reflect the perspective of women in 2023. It's no secret that some people think that these changes are heresy, but change doesn't have to be a bad thing at all. A lot can change between 1989 and today. People think differently. They want different things from their content, and most importantly for The Little Mermaid, they have different expectations for content that their kids will watch. The idea that Prince Eric wasn't motivated enough for Ariel is a big example of that, because as recently as the 2000s, people wouldn't have batted an eye at that. Like I said, people think differently now, and a lot of viewers are going to want Ariel to be better developed than that. The fact that the remakes are live action also reflect the fact that, unlike in the old days, animated movies are less popular now. While Disney is trying to play the nostalgia card on old fans, these remakes are mainly a way to retell the classic stories for a new generation. They haven't always gotten it right. In fact, they've gotten it wrong more than they've gotten it right. But you have to appreciate the spirit behind the changes. For the folks who are still unconvinced and want to argue that Disney is disrespecting the original story, I have a surprise for them. Why don't we look back on the actual original story? Like a lot of Disney classics, The Little Mermaid was adapted from an old fairy tale. This one written by Hans Christian Andersen and published in 1837. Some aspects of this story might sound familiar, like the fact that it's about a little mermaid that lives in an underwater kingdom with her dad, though for some reason, the characters in this story don't have names, so I'll stick to what Disney came up with. Things start to take a turn after the bit where Hans's Ariel rescues Eric and falls in love with him, as Ariel asks King Triton and her grandma if humans live forever. They explain to her that while human bodies die sooner than mermaids, they have eternal souls that live forever, while mermaids just turn to sea foam, and that's that. Getting an eternal soul is a big part of Ariel's motivation in this story, and she's so pressed about it that she's willing to go through Ursula's transformation spell, even though it's incredibly painful, and walking on her human legs feels like walking on knives. So how does it all end? Well, Ariel doesn't get Eric after all, but on the plus side, she does get a soul because she wished so hard for one. And yes, that does mean she dies at the end. So just like in the new movie, Eric is more of a cherry on top of Ariel's true motivation. What she really wants is something that will fulfill her personally, though we're still leaving that business about eternal souls in the 1800s. Disney's still taking a very different direction with Hans's story, and at this point, let's hope enough people are convinced that this is a good thing. So, from leaving out Ariel's quest for an eternal soul, to rethinking her and Eric's goals, that was how The Little Mermaid changed from its original concept.